Thank you, Sabrina. As Sabrina stated, my name is 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹. I'm an attorney with 𝗕𝗲𝗃 and Associates. And thank you so much for having me on as a guest today. I have had a lot of experience with citizenship applications. I have been practicing immigration law for it's been about a decade now, and through that time, I've been practicing, and I've had various roles in the immigration profession. I've been an officer with USCIS. I've worked on from start to finish on citizenship cases, from simple applications to federal court litigation to the revocation of citizenship. So I have experience on the whole spectrum of citizenship cases. So I'm very happy to be a guest on the show today, and I'm very happy to share my experiences and my tips regarding citizenship today. We're not providing advice because we're not, unless there's an attorney-client relationship, I can't provide specific advice because I don't know. Everyone has a different situation, and I don't know everyone's situation. So what we'll talk about today is, kind of general tips. It's not meant for anyone to rely on it specifically for their own situation. Because, I, like I said, I don't know what the situation is. So that being said, of course, the citizenship application can be very simple if your circumstances are simple. It can be a form that you fill out and then you show up for your interview, and then that's the end of that. A lot of times it's not. So it's up to the person who's applying to kind of figure out, like, do I have a criminal background? Do I have kind of a not so straightforward immigration history? Have I ever committed any kind of fraud or misrepresentation in the past? So if you are in that kind of situation, it's best to speak to an attorney about what the best course of action is for you, because you might need someone to kind of help you navigate the process. But if you don't have any kind of criminal record, if you have a clear-cut immigration history, nothing that could, raise questions, no fraud, no multiple applications, no aliases, the use of different names, no different identities, then Citizenship 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹 might be a program that you might consider using. It's very self-directed, so it's very user-friendly. It will guide you through the process of the citizenship applications. And additionally, there is a package where you can get review by an attorney to just make sure everything, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, in case you do have any kind of concerns. But as far as some tricks, some tips for filing the application, it's important to keep the basic requirements in mind. So there is a 5-year rule, and then there's 3-year rule. So if you've had your green card for 5 years, then you're eligible to apply for citizenship. Some people have the special privilege of applying only after 3 years of having the green card. That is for people who are married and have lived with U.S. citizens for the past 3 years. If that is the case, then they don't need to wait the whole 5 years. They can apply for their citizenship after only 3 years. So, and another category of people that can apply after 3 years is if you received your green card through 𝗟𝗏, it's also known as a battered spouse application or a self-petition. If you received your green card through that type of petition, you can still take advantage of the 3-year rule if you are married to a U.S. citizen. So those basic requirements are very important to keep in mind. Another basic requirement is that you have to be over 18 years old. If you're under 18, you cannot apply for citizenship. There might be other avenues for you, for those who are under, if you have children under 18 years old, there might be other avenues for your child under 18 to get their citizenship. Perhaps they have already become citizens by operation of law, by acquiring or deriving citizenship from their parents or sometimes their grandparents. So so those are the 2 really basic requirements. What I often see come up in interviews, that I've gone to hundreds of interviews now. What I've seen the officer focus on is a few main things. So, if you were married, if you got your green card through a U.S. citizen, or whatever it is, they'll kind of investigate or look into or question you, or maybe they'll look into the record about how you got your green card, your legal permanent residence. So if you got your legal permanent residence through a marriage, they might go back and kind of take a look at that to make sure everything was decided correctly when you got your green card. So that is usually a pretty huge problem. Is if there was an issue with how you got your green card, it's going to be brought up when you apply for your citizenship. Immigration authorities will, I'm not speaking on their behalf, of course, but I'm speaking from experience, is that they will look into whether you received your green card in a correct manner. If you, for example, received your green card as an unmarried child from your parent in the unmarried child category, but it turns out you got married after your interview, but before you enter the United States, that's going to be a problem that you will need to discuss with an immigration attorney. If you married a U.S. citizen and you got your green card that way, they're going to look into how your spouse got their green card. Did they marry somebody and get their green card that way? So they're going to be, kind of looking into all of that. So that's something very important to keep in mind. If you, like I said, if you have a clear-cut immigration history, no issues, no kind of funny business, then, you might want to go ahead and proceed with your application through Citizenship 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹. But otherwise, if there's something a little bit more complex than that, you'll definitely want to reach out to an experienced immigration attorney to talk about your specific circumstances. So that's something I see a lot. If you are a male that was in the United States from the ages of 18 to 26, you'll want to make sure that you are registered for selective service. That's the program that the United States has in place. If there is a time of national need, they will pull from that list to, do, work of civilian importance, work of military importance. So you'll want to make sure that you are registered for the selective service program if you are in the United States as a male between the ages of 18 to 26. So that's something that comes up a lot in interviews when the application is being decided. Another thing that comes up a lot in interviews is if you've paid or you owe any taxes to the U.S. government. So if you are not working, then obviously, well, it's not so obvious. You'll want to talk to an accountant or a tax professional. But usually if you're not working, that means that you probably don't owe taxes, but everyone's tax situation is different. And again, we're not giving tax advice here. But that is something that comes up a lot. If somebody owes taxes and they haven't paid them, they usually a payment plan will be considered with the IRS or with your state taxing authority. But that situation is going to need to be addressed before your citizenship application is filed, or at least the interview. And you'll always want to make sure you have the tax returns for the statutory period. And the statutory period, again, referring back to what I mentioned earlier, is either the 5 years or the 3 years. So that comes up a lot. If you have children and they are underage, so in most states that means 18, in some states like New York that means 21. If they do not live with you, you may be questioned about child support. Are you supporting your children? If there's a court order for child support, that analysis is a little bit more simple. Either you're following the court order to pay child support or you're not. If there is no court order, then you'll want to make sure that you have proof that you've been supporting your child or your children. And that means proof of payments either to the parent that lives with the child, or receipts, or whatever it is, however it is that you support your children. So that's something that comes up a lot in interviews. And finally, the fun part of the interview, of course, is the civics exam, and the reading, writing, and speaking portion of the test. So the civics civics test it's easy in that there's only a pool of 100 questions that you can be questioned on. And you only need to get 6 out of 10 correctly in order to pass. So, when you file the application, it's best to start studying at that time. And most of them, people, if you've been living in the United States, most of them, you should be able to answer I don't make assumptions. I'm a lawyer, so I might be biased, but most people should be able to answer them without even studying. But for others, if you just start studying the citizenship questions, when you apply, by the time of your interview, you should be ready to go. There's a lot of applications. Citizenship 𝗨𝗲 has tools to help you study for the test. So that's something you might want to consider. There's a reading test. You will be given 3 chances to read. You only have to get one correct one time. There's a writing test. And again, for the reading and writing, there's a pool of maybe 50 words or less that you might be asked about. And if you know how to read and write those 50 words, then you should be able to pass the reading and writing tests perfectly fine. For the speaking test, there's no set questions for the speaking test. It's kind of up to the discretion of the officer. The officer will make conversation with you about maybe how you came to the interview. They'll ask you questions on the application itself, and that's how they'll get to know if you have a basic understanding of English through spoken English. So those are the main components of the interview itself. There's also waivers to those exams that I just mentioned, the reading, writing, and the civics. There's waivers, and there's different kinds of waivers, and which entitle a person to different types of accommodations. And There's some that are automatic, and there's some that have to be applied for and accepted by immigration before they will be afforded. So we can talk about the automatic waivers. The automatic waivers are dependent upon how long you've had your green card and your age. So the most common is 55-15. There's 60-20. So that means if you're over the age of 55 and you've had your green card for at least 15 years, then it's possible that they will allow you to take the reading, writing, civics, and spoken portions of the citizenship application in your native language. And the same goes for 60-20. At that point, it becomes discretionary. It's up to the officer whether they want to give any of the test or if they're going to give them in your native language. So those are the automatic waivers. There are also waivers that you can apply for based on a medical exemption. So if you have, for example, suffered a traumatic brain injury, or you've been diagnosed with a mental disability, then, or a physical disability that affects your ability to learn English or learn civics, or learn anything related to the citizenship application, you can apply for that, get that waiver done by your doctor, and then at the interview, the officer will decide whether or not to accept or reject your waiver. If it's accepted, then some or all portions of these civics tests might be waived. If it's not, then the officer will proceed to administer the exams. So, it's also important to keep in mind that most people, you get two chances. So if something goes wrong at your first citizenship interview, if you don't pass any of the tests, or if you applied for a waiver and it wasn't accepted, you will get another interview date. It's usually exactly 3 months from the first interview date. You will get exactly 3 months, 120 days to come back to study, or to come back with a new waiver that addresses any defects which may have been in the first waiver that was submitted. So these are some very valuable tips that I have learned in my decade of experience working on citizenship applications. I hope that they are helpful to the viewers. If the viewers have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Yes, ma'am, surely we have so many questions in the inbox. The first question being, what are the requirements for obtaining US citizenship through naturalization?
Yeah, so we briefly touched on this earlier. So the main requirements are that you have to be over 18 and you have to have your green card for either 5 years or 3 years. Those are the main requirements. And actually, one thing I did mention earlier is that it's 5 years and 3 years. Those are the requirements, required lengths of time you must have had your green card. But you can actually submit the application 3 months ahead of time. So if you fall under the 5-year rule, you can actually submit your application after having your green card for 4 years and 9 months. If you fall under the 3-year rule, you can submit the application after having your green card for 2 years and 9 months. So those are the basic requirements. Otherwise, you have to have good moral character, which I kind of talked about individually. And that means they're going to look at your arrest record, they're going to look at your immigration history. Those are the basic requirements.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the answer. Another question have been asked by Mr. Yomi. He's asking, how does the green card application process work, and what is the eligibility for green card criteria? He's asking that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. How does the green card application process work, and what is the eligibility for green card?
Okay, so eligibility we already talked about. You know, you can just go back and take a look at that, what I mentioned about eligibility. The process is you submit the application, and then you might be called in to an application support center to give your biometric information. That means your fingerprint and your photo. Sometimes, especially they did this a lot during COVID, if they already have that information on file, the biometrics appointment may be waived because they will use the information that they already have on file for you. And then it's just a waiting game. Then you're just waiting for your citizenship interview. Right now, we're seeing a variance of time. Some of our clients at Gahan Associates, sometimes we're getting interview dates within 2 months. Sometimes we're getting interview dates within 5 months. Sometimes our clients have been waiting a year or more, and those clients usually have some kind of you know, not straightforward fact scenario. So it might be dependent on that, it might not. It might be just a coincidence or a random thing. But so you go to your interview. If you don't pass your first interview, then you come back for a second interview within after 3 months, and then you get your decision. And again, we're seeing a variation of time on decision. Sometimes our clients will get the decision right away, the next day, the next week. But sometimes our clients are waiting for a long time for their decision. And again, those are people who don't have a clear-cut fact scenario. So sometimes their decisions are held up. And if that's the case, if anyone's been waiting for a decision for a long time, my firm does what's called a mandamus on applications that have been decisions that have been pending for too long. Immigration has 120 days by statute and regulation to make a decision. So if more than 120 days has passed since your interview, you are owed a decision. So that may mean doing a follow-up with immigration and considering, I wouldn't say that 120 days is a good amount of time to file a lawsuit against immigration for a decision. That might be too soon, even though it's in the regulations that you are entitled to a decision after 120 days. But if it's been more than a year, hopefully not more than 2 years, then you may definitely want to consider speaking to an attorney about filing a lawsuit for a decision.
Thank you so much for the answer, ma'am. We have a lot of questions in the inbox. And one of the question is, how does the immigration process differ from refugee and asylum seekers? The question, he wants to get tips on this, please.
So if you received your green card as a refugee or by winning asylum, the same rules apply. The only thing that's different is sometimes you get a 1 year, we'll call it like a credit. We'll call it a 1 year credit when you get your green card. So you don't have to wait as long. And what I mean by credit is usually you have to wait 1 year before in asylee status before you can apply for your green card. So that 1 year you were required to wait to apply for your green card, which, by the way, that rule is also gone. You don't have to wait 1 year to apply. You can apply earlier than 1 year. You will not receive your green card before 1 year, but you can apply before 1 year as an asylee. That your 5 years starts ticking from the date that you were granted asylee status, not the date that you were granted your green card. And that should be reflected on your green card. When you get your green interview in 2023, if you were granted your asylee status in 2022, you'll see on your green card that says legal permanent residence since 2022. So you're getting kind of like a 1 year credit for that 1 year you were not a green card holder, but you were asylee status. And that counts towards the 5 years that's required to apply for citizenship.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your answers. Thank you so much. We have so many questions, and I hope all of them have been answered. Thank you so much for discussing the topic thoroughly with us. And we at Citizenship Selfie extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, ma'am, for addressing all the questions from audience and providing insightful answers. We also want to thank everyone for taking the time out from your busy schedules to join us today and actively participate by sharing your questions and pitching this session. Thanks a lot, ma'am, once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.